Okay, well, today I'm going to show you how to make a little bird sculpture out of modeling clay. So we're going to actually be sewing our birds, but before we do that, we sketched them, drew them, and now we're making a little maquette of a bird in modeling clay, just to get the feel of the three-dimensional form. So modeling clay is an oil-based clay, which means it never dries, can be reused, and we're not going to really be using a whole lot of clay, just a little bit, because we're going to be building something called an armature, which you create using tinfoil. It's kind of like the skeleton of the sculpture. So we're going to just take a very small piece of tinfoil because we're making a very small sculpture, and I'm just going to roll a piece of it like that. And we're going to crumple it in on itself, and we're going to kind of squish to make the bird's beak. We're going to go here to make the round head, and here to make the body. Okay, so we got the head, the beak, the body, and the tail. Now the body doesn't look quite fat enough, so I'm going to take another piece of tinfoil, and I'm just going to fold it down, fold it up, and I'm going to wrap it around just the body part. I think the head is plenty big, so I just need extra around the body to make the body nice and round. Okay, usually the body of a bird is kind of like a teardrop shape. It's bigger up here and narrower down here. So I'm going to just compress this and fold it a little until I start to see a bird form emerging. Okay, if it does not remind you of a bird when it's in the tinfoil form, keep working on it before you add the clay. Because if it doesn't look like a bird now, it's not going to look like a bird later. So the time to mess around with it is while it's still in the tinfoil form. Okay, I still think the body could be a little bigger, so I'm going to rip off another piece of tinfoil, and I'm just going to sit it in here. I think the head's already the right size, so I'm not going to mess with that. And I'm just going to keep wrapping the body until I feel that it looks really like a bird. It has to really remind me of a bird. And look at it from all angles. Look at it from the top, the front, the side, and see if it looks like a bird to you. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with this bird at this point. So my next step is I'm going to, there's my bird, it looks good. I'm going to now take some of this white modeling clay, which is oil-based. It does not dry. You can mush it up and reuse it. And I'm going to flatten it. So the one thing that's very important that you use is one of these messy mats. Mine are silicone. They come from Timu. I use them for all sorts of things. I use them to keep the table clean when I'm using a hot glue gun because silicone doesn't melt. And they're very good for keeping the clay off the table. What you don't want is you don't want this clay on your table because it's oily. And you don't want to get oil all over the table. So I'm going to just flatten this piece of clay. I don't need a lot of clay. I don't want to make a very big sculpture and I don't want to waste materials. So I'm just using my fingers to make a very thin sheet of clay. And then I'm going to take this sheet of clay and I'm going to wrap it around my bird. And then I'm going to mold my bird so that it looks bird-like. Okay, this is how my bird ended up looking. And this is just the beginning stages. So rather than sitting here messing around and molding it a little more, I mean, you're gonna do that when you make your bird. I'm just showing you how it's gonna end up. The next step is the wings. So for the wings, you take a piece of tin foil and you're gonna fold it in half so that it's flat, but it's double ply. And then you're gonna cut one wing out and then the other. So what I would do is I would fold it again, and then the wings are actually gonna be attached to each other. So there we go. And when I unfold it, I have these two wings that are attached to each other, and I'm gonna mush them onto here, and I'm gonna cover them also with clay. So I'm just gonna make another little flat sheet of clay. All right, so once you have your wings, you're going to mush them onto your bird up near the shoulder of the body as seamlessly as you can. Go to the bottom side, and you don't want any tin foil showing. Okay. So once you have your bird, the basic structure of the bird complete, you're going to go down to the tail, and you want to create the tail feathers. So you don't need any more tin foil, just a little bit more clay down here, and you're going to create the tail feathers. Okay, it's very simple. There we go. And now, at this point, you're going to add eyes. You can add just googly eyes like I have. There's a whole collection of googly eyes here. Try and pick the smaller ones. Or you can just use merely a different color of clay. Now, the next part is I have some modeling clay here. And I would just pick a couple of colors. If you look at actual photos of birds, you're gonna see that generally they'll have 2 to 3 colors. They're not gonna have a huge giant, they're not gonna look like the rainbow threw up on them. So I've got a whole bunch of colorful birds, and you're gonna see at the most 3 colors. Now, one of the colors you already have is the white that you have for the body. So at this point, you don't necessarily need much more than that, just maybe 2 more colors at the most. So I am gonna just pick, I think, a little bit of brown and a little bit of light blue. I'm not gonna go crazy and make a whole rainbow of colors, okay? And at this point, let me take my original bird here. And at this point, I'm just gonna take little bits of clay, and I'm gonna roll them into little snakes, or what's called coils. So And again, your birds don't need a lot of decorating, but what they do need is to be symmetrical. So if you put something on one side of your bird, you have to make sure to also put it on the other side of the bird. So I'm going to take my little coil, I'm going to break it in half, and I'm going to make some little stripes here. You don't have to blend them in completely. You can just be gentle and push them on here because there's oil in the clay that will hold it together. But if I put a stripe on one side, I have to put a stripe on the other side. Okay. So again, I think I'll use a little bit of brown on the tail feathers. I'm going to make a little coil. And I think I will add this little design in so it's in the middle, so it's symmetrical on both sides, and you just keep on adding, you know, your pattern of clay. You can look at a real bird for inspiration, or you can just make an imaginary bird. So you can decorate the top, you can decorate the bottom, you can blend the colors in if you think it looks better, or you can just leave them as coils on top if you think that looks better. And you can just add any decorations that you want. You don't need a lot of clay to make the details. And again, this is just kind of for fun. You know, before we sew our birds, we're going to mess around with making little modeling clay birds. Maybe spend a couple of class periods on that, and then we'll begin making another bird that's made and sewn with needle and thread. All right, I'm not going to bother finishing my bird because I think that you've got enough here to go on. And this example is enough to give you a lot of creative ideas.